There are few groups that exist in India which have made more of a mark than the Godrej Group. The Godrej Group have had a profound impact right from pre-independence times to certainly our independence movement. And today it is a group that continues to diversify. It is a group which continues to expand in different areas with a very clear vision of what it is to be Viksit in 2047, Viksit now ideally. The journey of the Godrej Group right up between now and 2047 has seen the group take strategic decisions to actually demerge a gigantic company into, I would say, two gigantic companies. But be that as it may, the role of the Godrej Group in India and our success story going forward is truly, truly remarkable. Nadir Godrej needs absolutely no introduction, quite besides being one of the finest business leaders in the country. He's got a real vision of what the future of a developed India needs to be. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us.
Thank you.
The Godrej Group does everything from aerospace to agriculture. Is it sometimes bad news to diversify too much?
Obviously, when you try a lot of new things, one or two of them fail. And we had a few failures in the past, like once we were in the tea business, which we gave up. But most of our businesses have been very successful. And nowadays, we are very careful to try and go into businesses where our brand is useful. That's one reason we went into real estate, because we thought a good brand would be very useful in that kind of business where trust levels were low, and trust is very important for the business. So we went into real estate. And recently, we have set up Godrej Capital, which is a non-banking finance corporation. Here again, trust is important. And we have values of sustainability, both environmental and social, which we think are very useful for a business in today's environment. And we'd like to go into businesses where this is important.
When you decided to sort of split the group into two large halves, it was a very amicable process. It was a process looking into the future of not just the lakhs who are employed in the company, but also about how Godrej sees itself in the future. Was that a very difficult decision to take, or was it utterly pragmatic?
In some ways, it was difficult, because there is an advantage of having everything under one umbrella, but it was also a practical decision to take. In our group, the management had been different for years, for 70 years or so. The two parts of the group were managed differently. The ownership was common. So it was not that difficult to take the decision. Mm-hmm. And we tried to be very fair about it, both sides, and therefore it was done quite amicably.
What are your core values?
Core values are, first of all, sustainability, and that includes social sustainability and environmental sustainability. Inclusiveness, it's a very important core value for us. We have now a DEI lab which looks into all kinds of inclusion. We don't think growth without inclusion serves any useful purpose. And the way climate change is going, if we are not serious about it, we won't have a planet, leave alone a business.
We'll talk about that in a moment. But have the core values of the Godrej Group evolved over a period of time?
No, I think core values have always stayed the same. Honesty has been a very important value. The interest of employees, the interest of customers. And if you really put customers ahead, you have to put employees even ahead of customers, because they are the ones who look after customers. So those are all important core values. And sometimes it looks like these values are a cost, but actually they build social capital. And when you look at it that way, it makes eminent business sense to have these values.
Brand heritage versus a modern appeal to, let us say, a native audience of digitally empowered people. Is that a challenge?
No, it's not a challenge, because your core values can be sustained anywhere. and you obviously have to modernize without affecting your core values. The only challenge is that the world is moving at a faster and faster pace. So whatever you used to doing in the past has to change. It can change while maintaining the core values, but it can be a challenge to change to this faster pace when you're used to a slower pace.
I'll go back to my first or second question on diversification and put it as a versus question. Diversification versus brand consistency. Is that a challenge?
That can be a challenge, and therefore the diversification must make sense for the brand, and the brand must make sense for the new business, in which case it is not a challenge. And most of our diversification was specifically done, as I mentioned, in the case of properties and capital, to utilize the brand, or they were in adjacent businesses where it was very easy for us to go into.
How is sustainability something which is not just a core value, it's just common sense?
It's common sense for multiple reasons. First of all, as I said, if we want to save our businesses, we need to save our planet. And it's sad that America is withdrawing from the Paris Protocol. I'm convinced that even if the American government takes this kind of stand, many Americans will realize that we all need to work together to solve the planetary problems. And it's easier to solve the problems than to adapt to the problems. We saw the Los Angeles fires, we saw the floods in Pakistan, we ourselves have had multiple climate crises, and the cost of adaptation is greater than the cost of prevention, just as the cost of curing disease is higher than the cost of preventing disease, yet we all seem to want to fall into diseases. We all want to live with climate change. It's totally stupid. The challenge is that to solve climate change, we all have to work together. Without a level playing field, none of us is incentivized to solve the climate change problem. With a level playing field, the cost is very small. So we need to find that level playing field, and we can only do that with cooperation or with very, very advanced technology. And that's why I think it's a great regret that we are not solving this problem faster. And I don't believe we can be a Viksit Bharat if we don't solve this problem.
I will talk about sustainability with you at length. But since you mentioned America in your last answer, tariffs are very much on the cards. Does that impact you?
It won't impact our business much because although we do export to America, they're not a very large percentage of our business. It'll certainly impact other Indian businesses, but sometimes it looks like Donald Trump talks a lot and then quickly withdraws. He's delayed his tariffs on Canada and Mexico, of course, only for a month. Let's see what happens at the end of the month. Probably look for some other quick transaction and then he'll let them get off the hook. I hope that's what's going to happen. But we also need to stand up to this kind of tactics and find good strategies. I know that India has been preemptive. I believe that the import duty on bourbon was reduced from 150% to 50%, and to other countries it was reduced to 100%, but for America we made a special exemption and made it to 50%.
We've got our priorities absolutely right.
I don't know if it's enough to buy us peace, but let's see. But there are many other things like that we can do to solve this problem.
When one speaks about sustainability, we need to link sustainability in business practice with environmental consciousness.
Yes.
We have a profound problem of air pollution across North India that's closely linked to agricultural stubble burning. The data is fairly clear. What is the way out, given the fact that we are overburdened in the Punjab and in Haryana in terms of the crops that are sown? There is not enough crop diversification.
Right. That is a problem. And the very short period between the Kharif crop and the Rabi crop incentivizes farmers to burn because they can't find any other quick solution to harvest and then plant again in a short time. We need to find solutions for that. Crop diversification is one, but even somehow or the other, using the stubble in a different way, using it as a biofuel or plowing it under the ground might solve the problem. And it is imperative to solve the problem because millions of people are being killed by air pollution or suffering from asthma and other terrible lung diseases. And it absolutely makes no sense. And I commend you for your excellent work in trying to find out what exactly is happening and sensitizing people so that we solve this problem. And it won't cost much to solve this problem. All these problems can be solved at low cost. And I also want to stress that for business, at first, trying to be sustainable may seem like a cost. But at the end of the day, if you think it out carefully, you save a lot of money. In India, we have another option. We are supposed to spend 2% of our profits on corporate social responsibility, and we can often use those spends to make ourselves more sustainable. For instance, in our group, we do watershed developments. These help farmers get livelihoods. Trees are grown in those areas, so carbon gets sequestered. And as a result of these projects, all done by CSR money, as a group, we are 6 or 7 times water positive. And we have greatly reduced our carbon emissions. We use a lot of green energy, not always solar. We use a lot of biomass because biomass works round the clock. We have plants that run round the clock. We need both steam and electricity. And biomass cogeneration is an excellent solution for that. So doing sustainability in a sensible way actually reduces costs. So I would urge everyone, all you have to do is spend time thinking of good solutions.
Why can't we have biomass plants which take agricultural rubble and convert it into energy?
I think we should work on that. And we ourselves on our sustainable journey, we use a lot of soybean meal, and we are trying to work out a system where the most unsustainable part of using soybeans is the soybean stubble. Mm-hmm. And we are trying to find solutions for using soybean stubble so that Scope 3 emissions would be reduced. And I urge all businesses that are buying agricultural produce to make their own efforts to solve these problems.
But in terms of Haryana and Punjab and the potential setting up of large-scale biomass plants which process biomass, is that something your group would be interested in potentially?
Yes, I think all of us
feed
should be
into the energy
in that.
grid.
And I recall that CII had a project to do it. I haven't followed up what they did with that, but it would be good to have an industry-wide initiative to solve some of these problems if the government is not capable of doing it.
Ultimately, do you believe one of the key aspects of what we are talking about, air pollution, we are of course talking about its impact on human lives, we need to also consider its economic impact. It is countless, billions of dollars, possibly every year, lost in terms of growth because of people in the prime of their lives being impacted or because of ailments, right? So it hits us economically. Viksit Bharat may not happen quite as fast as we wanted.
Yes.
Without this being resolved.
And all kinds of challenges like that. With climate change, we may have more mosquito infestation. As part of our CSR, we have a program called Embed, which tries to control the spread of malaria and dengue, and it's been very successful. Mm-hmm. Diseases such as diabetes, heart attacks, hypertension can all be stopped by preventive action. And we need to do all these things in our own personal lives, through business. And prevention is better than cure. It's well established, whether it's climate change or health. So let's prevent.
When one talks about artificial intelligence, there is often a sense that, that applies to sectors of the economy which aren't necessarily agriculture. But in fact, you and in our conversations, at the World Economic Forum, explained to me that AI has to be linked massively with agriculture.
Yes.
Why and how?
Right. The problem with Indian agriculture has always been that the size of the farms was very small. So we were losing out on scale. in the days when it was a scale economy. But now it's a network economy. And the solution to India's agricultural problem is to network. And how do you network? We have a business, the oil palm business, where our farmers, the smallholder farmers, they grow the oil palm tree. We provide them with the planting material, we pick up the fruit, and we give them advice. And that advice can be made much more efficient with artificial intelligence. Similarly, FPOs who buy produce from farmers of one particular kind can give advice to those farmers. So if we link up all the farmers, then we, in effect, have one huge farm to whom the correct advice can be given, and they can become more efficient, and they can become more sustainable. Because if you do regenerative agriculture, you're much more sustainable. But if you allow the soil to deteriorate and you throw in more fertilizer than you need, you not only cause pollution, but you waste a lot of money.
As we look at 2047, I would suggest that our biggest potential lies in our population itself, our demographic dividend. The fact that we've got young Indians, and the fact that we've got a large number of women. So two questions which arise out of this. Let's talk about the role of women first. How critical is bringing in women into the mainstream workforce, or where they are statistically accounted for as contributors, critical as we try and get to 2047?
It's very critical, because how can you take advantage of your demographic dividend if you only use half your population? So obviously we have to bring women into the picture. And the biggest barrier probably is education. Of course, more and more women are being educated in India than ever before. And where this started early, like in Tamil Nadu, there are multiple benefits. I believe that about 40% of the working women in India are in Tamil Nadu.
Right.
Not only is there this direct benefit because of the education of women, their families are healthier, more successful. The men in Tamil Nadu are more successful because the women are well educated. So there is this double benefit. So the women is very important, but inclusion should be for all kinds of communities that have not been included in the past, whether it is caste, whether it is religion, whether it is the disabled. All of them need to be included. All of them need to be given specific training, either to overcome their shortcomings or even more important, to enable them to use their full potential.
Reskilling is a crucial part, obviously. Skilling and reskilling and upskilling, call it what you want. Again, how is that critical to use our demographic dividend, to maximize the use of a demographic dividend?
It's absolutely important. The skills we learn today in school are going to be irrelevant very fast. The whole emphasis on memorizing, and people who cannot memorize successfully committing suicide, is absolutely ridiculous. All we have to do is teach people how to learn. People can teach themselves. That is the skill we need to teach in our schools and universities, and we should give up on memorizing. I think that's very, very important. And then, of course, they have to constantly relearn, either on their own or with a tutor. There are artificial intelligence tutors now available that can do an excellent job, but most of the time I think people can educate themselves.
One final or two final questions. As a veteran business leader, you've spent your lifetime doing this. How do you engage an entirely new young generation of Indians who have a different value system, different interests, perhaps than yours, and yet are such an important part of your company?
I've always tried to move forward, and I don't think my thinking is that different from my young generation. I have 3 sons who are from 28 to 32, and they help to keep me very young. And I always believe that they know a lot of things that we don't know, and we have a lot of experiences that they haven't had, and you can have an excellent exchange. And in our group, we've always believed in mentoring and reverse mentoring at the same time. It should be a two-way exchange. with which both of us can benefit. And I think that's the best way to handle that, and that's the best way to move forward, because the younger generation can teach you about the future.
And a final question to you, and a tough one. The leadership and the identity of the entire group is linked to the name Godrej, as it should be. I mean, your family formed the company. But what about those in the group? How do they rise if they aren't necessarily with that last name Godrej?
Oh, very few people in our group have the last name Godrej. And we believe that there should be an excellent partnership between family working members and professionals running the business. Very few of us today are CEOs in our group. At one time or the other we were, but now we often have an overarching position. And I think it's very important for professional managers and family business managers to work together. They bring very different skills, and they're complementary. We tend to look long-term. We tend to be more interested in preserving values. They tend to look more short-term. They're more profit-oriented. We are sustainability-oriented. And I think you need both to get the business to proceed, and the two should work hand in hand.
Mr. Nadir Godrej, you're inspirational to so many across this country, and your group is so much a part of the Viksit Bharat story going forward. It's been an honor and pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Come, sir, please.